Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Aidan McCarthy, and it's my pleasure to be with you today to talk to you a little bit about digital transformation in education. I think one of the critical things that we're all seeing today is that we are under a change journey. And I think 2020 has really shown to us all the changes from an education perspective, but also in our personal lives as well. When we think about technology and education, know that over the course of the last 100 years there's been significant investments in classroom technologies, and over that time we've seen this major change in terms of not only how we teach and how we learn, but also in terms of the way buildings and the design of schools, certainly as Korea is going through that change, is starting to really make an impact in terms of what we can do. As we think about those 100 years though, is that what we've seen this year is a very significant learning that's going beyond the classroom. And so the whole areas of remote learning and virtual learning, thinking about the concepts of what do we mean by blended learning, and how is learning different, when a child is at home or a teacher's at home compared to that traditional classroom, and the support mechanisms that happen within our schools. I think what's been really clear this year has been how some industries, some, whether it's in finance or in the medical industry, or whether it's in other areas of public sector or mining and all these sorts of other areas, a lot of them have been far more ready in terms of being able to work with technology. I think, what I've seen in my work with education systems around the world is that education, has been very, very different. Some have gone amazingly quickly and amazingly well because they were prepared, and then others really struggled. And some of those struggles may have been to do with, access, connectivity or access to devices or the learning systems, but then others were simply, where the parents were prepared and supported in terms of being able to help their child, right through to the curriculum, the way we assessed, the way we did attendance. And so it's in that sort of context is that we need to really think about, are we at a place in time where we need to have digital transformation in education to very much mirror how technology has been leveraged in other parts as well. So in essence, this is a repositioning of the discussion. This isn't just about thinking about classroom technology, about things like students with devices, or having access to the learning tools and teaching tools and infrastructure that's supporting us within our schools. It also is really showing us is that we need to think about the infrastructure as well as things like cloud services and mobile services, and how students are going to work at home as well. In essence, what we're also having to think about is that are the pedagogies that we've been using traditionally, still usable today? I think the curriculum, how assessment works, the types of infrastructure that we have, are we also building that so that basically we have much better flexibility? And also it's about rethinking and redesigning what is it we mean as school and schooling. That sort of concept then is that we need to optimize the infrastructure, think about all of our services being cloud ready. And that means that speed and performance, the user experience, if you're a young child or in the middle years or you're a senior student, all of those sorts of services will be slightly different, but underlying the privacy, the security, being able to ensure that learning can occur beyond the classroom is certainly now something that is front and center for most educators, but also most system leaders as well. Our world of education is now changed. And so part of this is that thinking about how we support students, from a well-being perspective, particularly if we may not be able to see them all the time. As many parents now have been far more engaged in the learning process than they may have over recent years, what's the role and what's the support mechanisms we can have for them as well? In essence, what we're looking at is how we look at new services, how things are digitally connected within our personal lives as well as within our learning lives as well. So when we think about these areas is that one of the areas that we have seen significant change over the course, particularly in the last few years, but certainly this year it has accelerated, is whether you're in banking or in finance or you're in medical or a lot of other industries, they've all been ready to take on the changes that have occurred, whether it's around where we teach, where we work, where we learn, but also leveraging then the cloud and Azure, you know, things like the capabilities of AI, looking at big data with analytics and so forth. I've noticed with many systems around the world that have implemented, you know, remote learning for the first time, one of the critical things that they've been trying to do straight away, how do we do attendance? And so there's been a lot of development that's been occurring in terms of being able to have students all sitting, okay, in the one video call and been able to do, not for learning, but simply to be able to do attendance. And so the goal, I think, you know, for us today is to look at how we can leverage the next generation of technologies, okay, to make it so much better than what it currently is. And the reason for that in part is that, you know, our students have changed. You know, who they are in terms of, you know, the qualifications that are expected of them as not only they go through school, but also then through, you know, vocational and universities, where their learning is obviously changing significantly, and we know that our young people are capable of that. How their learning is changing, and we're seeing a lot more in terms of, you know, normal, you know, I suppose personal sort of experiences in terms of what that could look like, whether it's on your mobile phone, accessing services, they're collaborating, they're communicating, they're video, they're texting, all of these sorts of scenarios, okay, need to be now considered as part of normal sort of technology, digital and learning processes. But I think what's also critical is really about what motivates students and what they'll do, okay, in the future years to come. These future years has been seeing us today, and I think COVID-19 is really, you know, for many education and government systems, is also a resetting not only of the skills that students are going to be expected to have, but also, you know, the world of work has, you know, changed significantly as well. And so there's a lot more in terms of the capabilities that we're going to be expecting, and we're already seeing major areas of skills initiatives of government starting to come through. To do this and do this properly then, is that one of the areas, particularly in our schools, is that we need to in part reset some of our pedagogies in our curriculum to have a lot more about what we call a student agency. And student agency is really around helping students to be part of their own learning process. It's about helping them build their goals, initiating, you know, things like challenge-based learning, problem-based learning type activities. So there's sort of that link between what we're teaching them and the curriculum that we have, but also what does that mean in terms of, you know, outside of school as well. And so we see amazing projects that many students are doing, particularly around things like climate change, or looking at, you know, creating their own apps, or developing, you know, different scenarios to be able to support others as they're thinking about not only school but community engagement as well. So in essence, what we're looking at is developing a much greater area in lifelong learning. We're thinking about this now that, you know, this is about life-wide learning, because it's not just about school and it's about learning forever, it's also about all the experiences that go with that. And we've certainly seen, you know, home now is one of those components. So to do this properly, we need a great digital strategy. But we also need a business strategy, how we fund this, how we resource this, and maintain this for sustainability, but also capability, scalability as well. So in that context, is that we are education, okay? That means then we need to have this in the context of learning as well. And so as part of that sort of thinking is that we need to ensure then that when we think about learning transformation, it's about really about how do we engage students in deep measurable learning, about skilling our teachers and our educators and our leaders, okay, to not only be capable and equipped, but also successful as well. It's rethinking what do we mean by personalisation, But a goal there is about creating really inspiring classrooms that can enable enjoyable learning as well. When I think about all of the work over this, the course of the last 9 months particularly, is that, whether it's you call it remote or blended or virtual learning programs, the critical thing here is that, countries all over the world have embarked with millions and millions of students that have never done this sort of, work before, suddenly having to do that. Some are successful, some have been more successful than others, but I think a critical piece here is that it's a learning opportunity for all of us in terms of not only what we've done in our school, within our region, within our system, but also being able to look at what others have done as well. A great piece of work that, I know, from a Microsoft perspective is that, we spent a lot of time, with the UNESCO team, developing out a huge amount of resources and content, and I'll send a link to you that, you can have a look at some of that resource as well. But the top level that we've found to be successful, particularly as it looks at online learning and remote learning, and what I say here is that, this is really about blended learning, because moving forward, we want to be able to continue some of these scenarios. And that means really looking at our professional learning. Teaching in a classroom face-to-face is different, and I think we've all learnt that. Okay, but what does that mean in terms of qualification, certification? What standards are we going to align to? What are the sorts of experiences? Are the applications that we were using, did they really work? Did we use too many applications? So thinking about the experience and the technology that goes with that. And then the other parts on the other side then is thinking about, well, how do we get the data, particularly when we can't always see a child or seeing, what they're doing, during a 24-hour period, providing the analytics not only from a learning, but also from teachers as well, looking at the well-being of the whole community in terms of what that's doing, as well as providing and ensuring that access for all, whether it's from a financial perspective, access to devices, connectivity, right through to, maybe students that may have special needs as well. So there's lots of content that, you can have a look at. So Microsoft has done a huge amount of, content that's, free for you to have a look at in remote learning. But there's also some really good research that now has come out from a lot of different academic providers. This one is a great one because nearly all of their, 24 resources and papers that have been written are all freely available as well. So let me just step back one step then and think about digital transformation. And in essence, no system I've come across has really been able to successfully suddenly go from one experience to this brand new experience that many of us experienced with COVID. And so this then gives us a really good opportunity to look at and analyse what worked well, what didn't, but also, why we weren't quite ready for that. And so when we think about digital transformation, what we're also then thinking about is that, well, how from a people perspective, how from a data perspective, and then all of the processes that work in there, creates more value not only for teachers and parents and students, but then wherever you are from a location-wise and so forth, is that does everyone have the skills, the capabilities to be able to be as effective, as the traditional scenarios that we've been used to? So transformation is about rethinking the physical and spaces. Thinking about education is unlimited by time or place. How we engage students, and it's been a lot easier to be able to engage them in deep learning when we can see them all and create all the experiences. But in a virtual capacity, it's a different set of deep learning type experience that we're providing. It's thinking about the personalisation, the skilling, but also again, is about monitoring that performance. And I think one of the two big challenges is that there's so many different tools that we could use to do very similar things. And what the real goal that we're wanting to highlight here today is that it's about resetting all of those tools to look at, well, which ones are the ones that are actually the most effective. Effective from a teaching perspective, effective from a learning perspective. And just simply having quantity, isn't good enough. And I think that's because what we're seeing is that as each school brings in more and more applications, you know, what that means then is that there's more and more data about how learning and teaching is occurring that's sitting in these particular apps and different applications. At a system level, it means that there's more and more, okay, that's finding it harder and harder to get the insights and the analytics as well. One of the areas that, you know, I've done a lot of work on is it's about analysing where all these different frameworks and what do they have in common. And looking at nearly 65 different frameworks, in essence, there's 4 big buckets. It's around leadership, it's around people, and that's not just about PD. It's about their talent, their journey that they're going on, so they're continuing to enhance their skills as well as the insights and performance. It's resetting the experience, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. What the younger students need, the middle students and the older students, may be completely different experiences, but underneath the technology still needs to be connected. The data, the systems, the capacity for personalisation, adaptive learning, but also the management and all of that, okay, needs to flow through. So when you think about these sorts of areas within digital transformation, Microsoft has an amazing transformation framework as well. And this has been a framework that's been, you know, developed since 2003 and been enhanced, and only in the last few months we've had a major enhancement that goes with that. It looks at sort of 4 core areas: leadership and policy, teaching and learning, intelligent environments, and student and school success. And in this context here is that these all become little conversation pieces, not only for your school, but also for the system as well. You may choose a different framework, okay, or you may choose a bit of this framework and a few other frameworks as well, just as I had sort of highlighted earlier. So when we think about leadership and policy, and if we think about, you know, our new schools, and I know there's some amazing things happening in Korea around smart green schools as well, it's about resetting that vision in terms of where we are today and where we want this to be over the next 3, 5, 10 years. And critically part of that is to consider the strategic planning and the change management, not only of staff, of educators, but it's also the student community, the parent community as well. It's about building that vision and all of the objectives that you want with that new vision, but it is also built around a culture of continuous improvement, but how do we measure that improvement as well? It's also about how we engage more effectively the community, and what are all the partnerships that you need to bring to that. And obviously, you know, from Microsoft, we want to be part of that amazing work that you're currently doing and wanting to do moving forward. The second area is around teaching and learning. It's about rethinking what is your pedagogy. You know, student-centered learning has been around for quite a long time, and in essence, student-centered learning has certainly been around the area of digital as well. So as students have greater and more access to their own personal devices and different devices that may be from robotics and STEM-type equipment, all of those sorts of areas, all of these sort of help in terms of students being able to work on their own in small groups, at home and in other areas, and that sort of helps from a pedagogical perspective around student-centered learning. But your traditional pedagogy that you have today needs also to be there as well. So all the goodness that goes with that, it's about blending these sorts of pedagogical experiences as well. As you do that, you're rethinking curriculum and assessment, and you're also rethinking the learning spaces that go with that as well, to be able to provide all of the capabilities that you need. Intelligent environments then is starting to think about, well, as we've sort of seen with COVID, is that, you know, our classrooms and our schools, in essence, we're providing what we call as hybrid learning. So it may be that there's learning at home, there's learning out in the playground, there's learning in the library, in the classroom, in these new spaces, but being able to provide the technology that supports all of that is critical, but it needs to be in the context of safety and security and privacy as well as to make all of this infrastructure optimized and sustainable to make sure that it really works all of the time, and where possible, making it green as well. Wrapped in all of that then is providing all of the insights to make and continue to make really good decision making at the learning level, the classroom level, the school level, the system level as well. And it's not just about analytics and advanced analytics, but it's also thinking about AI and the opportunities with recommendations, predictions, adaptive learning, but also from an ethical standpoint. The final thing in this framework, and I'm going to send you a link that's going to, you'll be able to really, find out a whole lot more information about all of this, but this is around the student and school success. How we then develop the capacity within educators, leaders, and the development of the IT people to basically take in all of this. It's about not only then supporting students with their future-ready skills, but within all of this change, we need to ensure that this change is supported at the personal level. And it's about engaging the social emotional learning, the social emotional teaching, and this extends to parents as well. And I think we've seen a lot of this, particularly during COVID-19. And then the final critical piece is that all of this, needs to assure the equity, the inclusion, the accessibility for all. And certainly technology has a major play on that in terms of providing from a teaching and learning perspective, but there's also the financial ramifications that go with that for those that may not be able to afford, some of that equipment. How do we support that? Right through to the accessibility of students that maybe need to be extended and those that need to be supported. Finally, I'll just wrap with is that basically with any transformation program is you need to build your journey. What's the journey for each individual, right through to what the system may look like. And I've used this sort of journey map for schools and systems where it's thinking about that privacy, the security, your username and password, and what does that give you? And it gives you all of your teaching and learning suite because it knows who you are from a student or a teacher perspective. It gives me the access to all of the administration, from the lighting control in my classroom right through to the demographics, the information, the attendance, the pastoral requirements of students, the insights, but also my personalised experience. Finally then, there's some amazing supporting research that you can have a look at. Microsoft invests significantly with many researchers around the world to basically provide, very topical areas, whether it's around emotion, the cognition in the age of AI, what is the class of 2030, the staff of 2030, these are all really good resources. And so finally, as I sort of wrap, I just want to then highlight back onto my journey map here, is that underneath this, you can sort of see a little bit of a roadmap. And that's because the number one to make this journey map work is it's all about what we call is the change leadership journey. Bringing the whole community on, having our leaders that really understand this well, but the professional development, the training and the support for the community to make this really work. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity today to have this, conversation with you, and I wish you all the very best.